You're nearly 4 kilometers up from the ground. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of an airplane, equipped with a parachute, ready to make that leap. Your heart is pounding so hard it feels like it might stop. The view of the world from up here is breathtaking. As you let go and start your descent, imagine the rush of wind filling your ears, the sound of the air rushing upwards due to your fall. In the first couple of seconds, you accelerate to speeds of around 50 kilometers per hour. Your velocity increases rapidly and you continue to plummet with accelerating force. After a free fall lasting just over half a minute, you've descended to an altitude of around 1,800 meters. It's time to deploy your parachute. Because without deploying it, you'd fall several hundred meters further. You reach for the cord, but the dread realization hits you. The parachute doesn't open. You find yourself hanging by a thread, suspended in midair, and the worst scenario you feared has become real. The parachute has failed to deploy. You have between 45 to 80 seconds before impact. So, is there anything you can do to save yourself? Maybe science could offer some insight. Let's explore together. Let's begin with a fundamental truth. Jumping with a parachute comes with inherent risks. It's not a situation like sitting at home. According to data from the United States Parachute Association, there is a parachute malfunction in about 1 out of every 1,000 jumps. While this number might seem low at first, when you consider that an average of 350,000 people collectively make around 3 million jumps annually, this seemingly low probability suddenly becomes a significant concern. Of course, a parachute malfunction doesn't always result in fatality. Measures like having a reserve parachute are taken precisely to mitigate issues that might arise with the main parachute. Remember, the things you do long before a disaster strikes are what increase your chances of survival the most. In a typical year, the odds of dying during a skydive are around 1 in 10,000. Comparatively, the risk of dying in a car accident is roughly around 6 in 10,000 for every 15,000 kilometers driven. If you regularly drive but only skydive once a year, your risk of dying in a car accident could actually be higher. However, the more frequently you skydive in a year, the higher your individual chance of encountering a parachute-related incident becomes. This is known as risk tolerance. But I'll delve into these details in another video. Please make sure to enable notifications so you don't miss it. Anyhow, let's say you've attached your parachute to yourself, but it just won't open. The likelihood of finding yourself in such a situation is nearly non-existent. In almost none of the instances where you hear parachute didn't open stories, does it mean the parachute literally failed to deploy from its container. More often, it's about the parachute being out but not in a deployable configuration, thus unable to fulfill its essential function of slowing down and stabilizing the descent. Many parachute malfunctions can be resolved by experienced jumpers while in midair. Skydiving remains one of the most exhilarating experiences you can have and is generally considered quite safe. But I'm not making this video just to state the obvious. If there's no issue, anomaly, or explicable reason, then I have nothing to pass on to you. So let's create a hypothetical problem for myself. Let's assume that both the main and reserve parachutes fail to open due to a bizarre reason. Or let's go even further. Envision that you've jumped without a parachute and are regretting it afterwards. In such a situation, what would you do? Your first objective would be to slow down your fall. The average human plummets at speeds of around 200 kilometers per hour. But if you assume a feet-first position, that speed can increase to 300 kilometers per hour. This is the same speed at which the fastest bird in nature, the peregrine falcon, dives to catch its prey. With certain specialized suits, you can even accelerate up to speeds of 500 kilometers per hour. However, our goal is not to accelerate, it's to decelerate. There's a crucial term you need to be aware of concerning your falling speed: terminal velocity. The moment you leap from the plane, two forces come into play. The first is the downward force, gravitational pull, which accelerates you. Your weight is determined by the product of your mass and the Earth's gravitational acceleration. The second force is air resistance, also known as drag, which acts to slow you down, but unfortunately isn't strong enough to bring you to a halt. As you descend through the atmosphere, density increases downwards. Consequently, the air resistance on you increases as you technically move into denser regions. Interestingly, as your speed increases, your drag coefficient also increases. This factor will determine what we'll soon call terminal velocity, a key factor affecting your odds of survival. However, the fact that the drag coefficient increases as your speed rises also explains why, upon jumping from a plane, you don't accelerate linearly but rather gain speed with a diminishing acceleration. As you speed up, the gravitational force pulling you downward becomes harder to overcome due to the growing air resistance. Lastly, there's the cross-sectional area. If we were to slice a plane perpendicular to your movement direction, it's the area that slice would encompass. Therefore, for example, birds of prey like falcons or extreme divers adopt a streamlined position while diving downwards, reducing their cross-sectional area in the direction of motion. Because the smaller the area they present, the less air resistance they face, and consequently their fall speeds increase. They say your life flashes before your eyes just before you die. This isn't proven though. We'll discuss this in another video, but what did we do? Right, we were falling. Let's get back to that. Now, armed with this information, you can better understand the mechanics of the parachute situation. Let's conjure a high air resistance scenario where our terminal velocity is much lower than normal, allowing us to manipulate the resistance and choose our descent direction. The parachute creates an extensive cross-sectional area, balancing your fall speed and affording you control, much like an airplane wing design, but you're the unlucky one. You lack a parachute. Consequently, you're headed for impact. Still, the physics of the balance between gravitational and air resistance forces, as I just explained, is your only friend during this uncontrolled descent. Now let's talk about terminal velocity. The silver lining in this disastrous situation is that you won't continue accelerating during your fall. As you accelerate, due to the reasons I mentioned earlier, air resistance also increases. Thus, at a certain point, air resistance equals the downward force caused by Earth's gravity and your mass. At this point, two opposite yet equal forces are acting on you, resulting in a balanced state where your acceleration, the rate of change of your speed, vanishes. You are now falling at a constant speed. This is precisely what we call terminal velocity. It's your maximum speed. Rearranging the terms we've just learned, we can calculate this velocity as follows. In most cases, by the time you deploy your parachute, you've already reached this velocity. If you did have a parachute, thanks to the changing air resistance aided by the parachute, you generally balance out at a terminal velocity about 5 times lower. This is what controlled descent is about, but you don't have a parachute. Even so, while you can't accelerate beyond terminal velocity, you're still plummeting at speeds of around 200 kilometers per hour. We need to mitigate this somehow. You can't control gravitational acceleration and atmospheric density. You can only control 3 things: mass, drag coefficient, and cross-sectional area. If you're carrying any unnecessary mass, shedding that weight would reduce your overall mass and consequently lower your weight. However, this is rarely feasible. This leads to an intriguing debate. Sometimes people don't throw themselves from a plane without a parachute. Instead, a passenger plane might break apart and passengers find themselves falling with their seats or pieces of the aircraft. Here, freeing yourself from your seatbelt to rid yourself of the aircraft's superfluous mass might seem advantageous to reduce terminal velocity. But this also factors into the impending impact scenario. Sometimes staying attached to a seat or aircraft debris can enhance your chances of survival in the ways I'll discuss shortly. However, as your landing spot greatly influences this outcome, and if you're tethered to an airplane part or a seat, you can't select where you'll fall, so pondering this aspect is untimely. Let's disregard mass. Drag coefficient and cross-sectional area are key. The best way to increase drag coefficient and expand cross-sectional area is to assume the X position. You need to stretch your arms and legs horizontally to widen your surface area. Through this motion alone, you can boost the drag coefficient by around 30% and increase the affected area by approximately 300%. Assuming all else constant, adopting this position can reduce your speed by roughly 50%. Instead of falling at 200 kilometers per hour, you'd be descending at 100 kilometers per hour. Not too bad. Now we need to choose a landing spot by facing in the direction you want to go and bringing your arms and legs close to your body. You can employ a method called tracking to propel yourself in the desired direction. A professional can cover about 30 meters horizontally per second with this technique. However, if you're an amateur, you probably won't be able to cover great distances using this method, but it can help you select the best among the potential landing spots. So, where are you going to land? Let me first address what's likely on everyone's mind, yet entirely inaccurate. You definitely won't land in water. Water is an incompressible fluid. When subjected to vertical forces, it barely compresses or stretches. While you can slightly compress the air in a syringe by closing its end, you can't compress water. For instance, hydraulic systems in our vehicles rely on water's incompressibility. If you were to crash into water at 100 kilometers per hour, unlike when you dive from 3 meters into water, you wouldn't pierce its surface tension. Your mass isn't enough. Since surface tension isn't broken, water acts nearly like concrete. Of course, it will eventually give way, but by that time it would have absorbed all the energy. As a general rule, if you don't know what you're doing, never jump from a height exceeding 15 meters. Think about it this way. If you were to jump from 50 meters, the deceleration you'd experience, or G-force, would be around 270 Gs. This is akin to a head-on car collision. During an emergency ejection by jet pilots, their seats experience about 20 Gs. Remember how much it hurts to belly flop from 2 or 3 meters into the water? Now imagine that pain multiplied by thousands. If your consciousness fades after the impact, you'll drown. Therefore, forget about water. Your top 3 crash candidates are swamps, snowdrifts, and trees. They share a common trait. They're all compressible structures. They can absorb some of the force and thus energy applied to them. Our goal is for these soft structures to absorb part of your energy as you make contact with them until you reach a solid surface, or the point where they can't compress any further. Remember, when falling from a great height, what kills you is not your speed, but the abrupt change in speed, that is, the acceleration due to the impact's g-force. R, or acceleration, is the change in velocity per unit of time. The larger this is, the greater the force on you due to your constant mass. Therefore, the best way to decrease acceleration is to minimize your initial speed, your terminal velocity, and extend the time over which speed change occurs as much as possible after impact, even if on a millisecond scale. Soft surfaces like swamps or snow allow you to achieve this. Tree branches, due to their flexibility, could achieve this too, but remember that at high speeds they might act like spears, piercing through your body. Hence, angles of the branches, their thorniness, and the durability of your clothing might influence the outcome. If none of these options are available, your best bet is to find a large object with a broad structure that can bend and absorb energy upon impact, like a house roof or a wide-bodied vehicle. This is because surfaces like soil, concrete, or asphalt hardly compress or bend. Consequently, they cause the entire energy transformation during impact to be absorbed by you. And now the moment of impact has arrived. Let's be honest, the situation won't be good at all. No matter how much you slow down or how soft the landing spot is, crashing at a minimum of 100 kilometers per hour won't be a pleasant experience. It will hurt. It will hurt a lot. You'll probably lose consciousness from the pain. Still, there's one last thing you can do to increase your chances of survival, even if slightly after potentially passing out. Right before impact, shift to an upright position with your feet facing down and your head held up, maintaining a vertical stance. Protect your head by tucking it between your arms and locking your hands behind your back. Here, we're sacrificing your legs and spine. However, as your leg bones, ankles, long leg bones, hip bone, and vertebra shatter, they'll dissipate some of the energy. It's similar to the crumple zones in our cars during a collision. These zones disperse energy. That's why falling onto things that can bend and break is generally a better idea, even though these broken pieces might cut into your body. If you haven't passed out from the initial impact, you can try something similar to what football players do when they fall roll. Aside from fooling referees, Neymar's skillful rolling has an actual purpose. By altering the direction of the forces applied to you as you roll, you distribute the energy. This softens the blows your body, especially your bones and joints, endures. And at this point, if you're still alive, congratulations, you haven't died. For now, dozens of your bones are in pieces. You're likely experiencing massive internal bleeding. Your spine has sustained damage, and many of your ribs are likely fractured. Some of them might have punctured your lungs, heart, or blood vessels. The likelihood of having suffered a head injury is high. I hope someone who jumped with you is present and can rush you to the hospital. The faster you reach the emergency room, the higher your chances of survival will be. What else can I say? Get well soon. I hope that thanks to science, you've managed to increase your odds of survival, even if only slightly. Do you have questions about how to survive in such dire situations? Share them in the comments, because in the upcoming videos of this series, we'll address your questions as well. See you in the next video. Farewell.